This Feast of the Ascension can really have some difficult things about it. For the ascension of the Lord leaves us with a loss. We just know that the Lord ascending into heaven leaves no mark again. What do we do with this feast? Do we celebrate loss? Do we celebrate emptiness? How should we handle this feast of the ascension of the Lord returning to the Father? And I think it's a really important question because inside of this feast there is a good teaching for us. Look what happens to the disciples. We're told that they are gathered there and the Lord ascends. They look up. He is gone from their sight. They go back to Jerusalem, back to that upper room, back to a place familiar, back to a place of security, back, and we could read between the lines of the author Luke here, to figure it out. To go back to say, now what do we do? Go back to say, what does all of this mean? Go back to say, how are we to carry on? He's no longer in our midst. In that in-between time, isn't it? It's the in-between time for these disciples, in between what we call the ascension and what we'll know later in the church, the descent, the giving of the Spirit, Pentecost. How do you live in these in-between times? That's what the disciples are showing us, teaching us, or maybe telling us. How do you live? And that's an important lesson for us, because all of us at one time or another live in the in-between times. We're in between the loss and the fulfillment. We're not quite there yet, between the ascension and not quite experiencing the gifts of the Spirit. We've done that in our lives. Some of you in different ways experience this in-betweenness. Perhaps it is the loss of someone you love very much. It can be a brother, a sister, a parent, a spouse. And there you are feeling, unsecure, uncertain of where the ground is. I don't know where I am right now. I've lost that point of identity I had. So I'm in between the loss and not quite in the center of the fulfillment or the promise. I'm still in between. In between can be many of you who are going to be graduating in the next few weeks. You're in between. You're done with one part of your life, but you've not fully grasped the next. If it's a high school graduation, then you know you've got hopefully a future where you're going to go on for more schooling, technical, or perhaps preparatory in college. And that's uncertain, isn't it? You're not quite sure what to expect. For many of you, the first time living away from a family and embracing another way of living. And when you get there, no doubt for all of you, a little sense of homesickness or a little sense of finding your place in between that one thing and before the next thing. It could be if you've graduated from college and not quite having a job, looking now out in that job market and longing for even the times of exam week when it was at least sure what I was doing the next day. Now the future is uncertain. The in-betweenness of that, the uncertainty of that. It can be, too, in the own brokenness of your own life. For whatever reason, it can be a loss of a job or a question about your health or something else that makes you feel a little unsteady. Again, the in-between times. So those times and many others you could name make us look to this scripture and say, well, now what do we do? And certainly what the disciples do is very important. They do not isolate themselves, but they come together. And they come together for mutual support. They come together for the hope and the help. They come together because they know being alone will only make things worse. They do not isolate. And in their coming together, there is prayer. I think you and I need to remind ourselves of that, because when we are feeling in between, we often feel, not quite ready for prime time. We feel not ready to be with other people. We feel as though, I don't think I want to be around them. And we think, surely they don't want to be around me. I isolate. I want to pull the covers over my head. I want to run and hide. Wrong thing. Disastrous thing. For I will not at all ever feel whole and healed apart. The disciples show us one of the first things. Stay with that community. Stay with those who love you. Stay near those who help you. Stay near those who can be instruments of God's healing in this in-between time. Stay near those you know are instruments of God for you. And then they prayed. Don't forget that. Sometimes we think at once that the prayer is not going to help. How is the Lord going to make sense? How will the Lord put this together? How will the Lord make me feel better? I can't tell you how, but I can tell you that God will do that. He will restore me. He will help me heal within. He will show me new ways of intimacy and commitment, community, companionship in my life. I need that prayer. I need to be connected with my God, the God who promised not to abandon me, the God who said He would be with me, send the Spirit to guide me. In my in-betweenness, I should not neglect prayer. It is healing, it is hopeful, it is the pathway to wholeness. And then I have to look to what happens with me in this in-betweenness. I feel a sense of, shatteredness, I guess would be one way, or a letting go, a stripping away of things. And in that in-betweenness, I begin to see what's really important. How many times in crisis in my life, I've learned to live with less, or I've learned to do with something I thought was so essential. It's not that that other thing was bad, not at all. It was probably good. But I've learned something more important. And I think that's an important step. The disciples learned that they have the power within themselves, given by the Spirit, to preach. They learn that they can continue this church. They learn that they have the ability to tell others good news. They didn't really know that before this. What do you learn in the in-between times? God is surely revealing who He is, opening up for us what He can do for us. But unless we reflect and see, although I have lost, although I have given away, although I have not had what I once did, doesn't mean that I am without. God is giving me something, pulling me into something. That's an important piece. In the midst of my loss, I look at what I have lost, of course, but I don't always see and recognize how God is empowering me, sustaining me, and giving me something to live through and on. The disciples learned it, so must we. The stripping away, the letting go has revealed something new. Embrace it, recognize it, and live with it. And then finally, it seems, this ascension makes me recognize that this is a seed time. It is everywhere. And I want to say foolishly, don't we all plant those nice annual flowers in our yard? I did. The deer got every one of them. Oh, it's okay. I'll plant a few more, but I'll spray something this time. We do the seed time, don't we? We put things in there so that it'll grow, so that we'll see it. We'll acknowledge it in the harvest in August and September. This is a seed time too, in the in-between time in our life. These are the seeds of hope are beginning to be sowed. In the loss, I'm beginning to get another sense of God in my life, hope. There is this time, this in-between time, when I'm beginning to recognize the power God is giving me, or the new vision God is holding for me. It's a time of hope. I don't know fully what will happen, but I do know my God is near me and with me. That's what the season is about. This feast is telling me. It's telling me an important thing. It's saying, yes, there is loss, and all of us know that. It's that in-between time, what I've let go of before I've grabbed hold of. And we've known it in different things, in our relationship, in the events of our life, in the unfolding of what God is doing. In all of those things, though, do what the disciples did. They gathered and held on to those God had given them. They stayed together and not isolated or run away from what God could speak in the midst of that community. And they prayed, saying to the Lord, guide me to what is new. Comfort me in what is I've lost. Show me where it is you would guide me. And then in the stripping away, the letting go, they began to uncover something new. if you look and are patient and sit with the Lord. For surely it is for you and me, this in-between time also, a time of hope, the seed time of hope. Use the ascension then, that in the midst of your loss, to uncover what new God is bringing into your life.